Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett
Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisor.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland. Today, I've got my old buddy, Chris Dreyer here. What's up, man?
Excited to be here.
It's
Thanks
good
for
to
having
have
me.
you back in the building.
Yes. It's changed. I miss it.
Yes. So Chris used to be in our office building here, and now he's living the life in Southern Illinois, right?
Oh, yeah. Southern Illinois, Murfreesboro, Marion.
So, love it. It's a good area. God's country, right?
Right. A lot of hills.
It's awesome. Well, it's good to have you, man. You are the CEO and founder of Rankings, an Inc. 5000 company, man. 5 years in a row. Man. 6 years in a row. Who's counting? Right?
Who's counting?
That's old news. It's just old news. So 6 years in a row, man. And what I think is cool is I didn't know much about you or your business. And, here you are. You're on our second floor. And I'm like, what is this rankings.io thing? I don't even know what IO is. And it's like, as we've gotten to know each other and I've seen you grow over the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been amazing to watch, man.
Thank you.
So, but before we dive into all the great stuff, let's talk about what's made you the man you are today and go into that backstory a little bit because there's a drive that's in there.
Oh, yeah.
We got to figure out what that's about.
Let's hear it. What do you want to know? How far back?
Hey, whatever, some moments in your life that you think this is probably why I do what I do in today's world.
Yeah, so the audience is probably going to think I'm a crazy person after some of this, but let's see. So I was really competitive in sports, and my dad was like always drilling me. Like weekends or practice, it didn't matter. Like we got the reps in to the point where like some of my friends, like they would want to come to practice with the dad, and then they'd come and be like, no, we're never going again. Right. I was like, yeah, it's practice. It's not shoot around time. All right, so that kind of drive stemmed from him. He's very Ricky Bobby-esque. Okay. Second place is the first loser is like basically my dad. Yeah. So he pushed me. I went to college. I knew my mom always told me I was a rebel, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was honestly a terrible student. Yeah. I don't know how I ended up with a history education degree. I thought I was going to be a basketball coach and do the collegiate path, just stay with the competitive side. And I got this job at Heron High School, and I was the detention room supervisor because if you're a supervisor there, it was the same track as teaching. So I could do that for 2 or 3 years and be a fourth-year teacher, right? And I typed in how to make money online, and I took this course, and by the end of my second year teaching, I was making like 4 times the amount doing digital marketing I was teaching. And it was just...
time to go.
Time to go, yeah. Well, I got paid those summers off, so it was like I get paid the whole summer, and I got this, and I moved to Florida, and my roommates all work from home, and it just wasn't the best environment as a party environment. Yeah. And I hit this first Google algorithm that everyone talks about, and it took my income down from like, let's say 16 to like 2.
Wow.
Back then I wasn't the saver of money or the investor. Mm-hmm. And so I got on Craigslist because that's what you used to do. And I typed in SEO, and I sent off my resume to so many people that I hit their filter, and that's just an insane amount. And I got hired. I got 3 job offers, and most people say, Chris, well, which one did you take? And well, I took all 3 because they were remote, full-time jobs. I had my team, and they're all agencies, so I got to see what worked, what didn't work. And after about 1.5 years of that, I got the confidence to start my agency. So that's like the fast-paced version. There's a lot of chaos and little things
learnings
amidst that.
And victories and losses. And, So what... When did you bet on yourself to say, you know what, instead of getting this nice gig from these big agencies, I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to go out and do this on my own? What was that turning point for you?
The real turning point was I had the 3 agencies because I had a team. And I today everyone talks about delegation and working on your business and SOPs and all these things, but I already had that. I had a knowledge base and processes that my affiliate team was from the Philippines, and I was using a company called Odesk. It's now Upwork. And so I was the best employee at all 3 jobs because the amount of productivity I could do was so much more than everybody else because I had a team behind me. And that's where I got the confidence. I always say,
the team behind you is from these other employees, right? These other companies, yeah.
I like to say that competence gives you confidence. You probably heard a version of that. And the confidence increased enough to where I started the agency. And just from a math perspective, it was like I only needed a handful of retainers to make the equivalent of what I was from a salary perspective. And I knew that I could hustle and do it. And that's what I did.
It's just a math problem at that point, right? Yeah. So for that, so you started that, and I think what I've appreciated over time watching you, what I think is also scary for a lot of people is you went into a niche market, right? You said, I'm only going to work with lawyers, right? Attorneys, lawyers. Was that scary? And if so, how did you overcome that?
The scary, yes, different aspects of it, right? The first thing I thought was I was undercapitalized, and I knew that if I was going to hit multiple industries, I need to have a lot of capital to really have the best chance to succeed. I know there's a lot of stories of other people that did it, but so I looked at legal and being transparent, there's a status component to legal. It's not like you're doing home services for, pest control. Not to say anything's wrong with pest control companies. There's a little status component there. It's been around for a long time, so a little bit more insulated from risk versus new tech or AI or Web3 or whatever. Not to say those aren't emerging too. And I made that decision, but the real decision that I did was different. Is I took not only legal, but I did a subset for personal injury law, and that was the real scary part because it's like I'm saying no to all these areas of law, and I'm only going to focus on this one. So my TAM was significantly smaller.
Yeah, and so when you think about that, then how did you go about marketing yourself, right? So if you're a new agency, I could work with this big guy or big gal out in New York or California, wherever. How did you differentiate yourself to then get the client?
Yeah, that's a big question here, right? Is differentiation. And back in the 70s, this term evolved, and it was a USP. That's when it came about. But really, what it meant was how are you distinct? How are you distinctive in the market? One way to be distinctive is to be the best and to focus on a certain area. There's perception that you're the best in that field, but you got to remember every brain surgeon has their first brain surgery. There's a perception there, no matter what you know about them from their background. So that was part of it. A lot of times people talk about marketing and doing different tactics, and they miss the relationship equity. And for example, even in the legal space, I don't know the top criminal defense firms or family law, besides maybe some locally they hear on the radio. But in the PI, there's an awareness that comes about, and you kind of move up the ladder from a relationship equity. And now, I know Morgan & Morgan. I know Mike Papantonio, but it took time to develop that.
Yeah. So how did you do that, though? So because I think about it in my world too, is trying to find the people that I've been able to be around, in my career. I didn't start that way though, right?
Yeah.
I was working with people that, we could barely rub two nickels together, and that's where we all started, right? And so I'm always curious about how you got into the circles and the roles that you're with now.
In the beginning, I didn't have a ton of capital for distribution for TV and radio and all these things. So I had to do the things that didn't scale. So that's a lot of one-to-one, shaking hands, taking people to breakfast, taking them to lunch, building that network and doing social media, all the things that don't really scale. You have to do them kind of individually. One of the first things I did was I knew I was in the legal vertical, and I was just looked on LinkedIn. I'm like, who is in the legal space that I could meet with? And I had breakfast locally. In fact, like right across the street with a few people. And I just stayed connected with them. There was Fine Law reps from Thomson Reuters, and ended up being referral relationships. And that's kind of how it set the tone. Of course, once you get more capital, then you can pay for paid ads and distribution, and even your podcast, things like that build over time. But early on, it was a lot of belly to belly, a lot of shaking hands, a lot of relationship stuff.
Yeah. It was funny because I wrote down, this is 5 years ago now, I'm 45, but when I was 40, I wrote down things. And one of the things I wrote down on the top 40 things I've learned in 40 years was take the lunch. Right? Because a lot of times people are like, I don't want to take the lunch, or not, it's not going to result in anything. It's not going to be, I'm not paid for it, whatever it may be. And it's just, I found for years that the going belly button to belly button, right? Eyeball to eyeball, building a relationship, good things come out of it. And you don't know when, but good things come out of it. You agree?
I couldn't agree more. And there's a certain trust component that comes from that. And, even though when we're talking about leverage, there's not a lot of leverage. There's one-to-one versus what we're doing, your audience. It's like a keynote presentation every week. Right. But those are the things that I think the trust component is a little bit of an intangible.
Yeah. So talk to us about SEO, search engine optimization, right? So people hear that, but the layman terms for guys like me that we hear it, we don't know exactly what it means. Whether I'm a lawyer, a financial guy, or a carpenter, whatever it is, how important is it, and what in the hell does it actually mean for us as business owners?
Really good question. So search engine optimization is essentially, when you think of this, let's just call it Google. Yeah. Google owns the lion's share. It's making sure that your business ranks at the top of Google for whatever industry you're in. And there's a lot of challenges that go with that. Of course, you can do paid and do that immediately, but that could be very costly. From an organic perspective, it's creating excellent content, targeting keywords, making sure you get your content endorsed, which is backlinks from other websites. And each space is a little different, right? If even in law, if I was going to target, say, a patent attorney, there might be only one in the city. So just by the nature of being the only one, you automatically rank. But when we're talking personal injury or criminal defense, ton of saturation, ton of competition, and it demands real expertise. Yeah. And that's what it is. And that's when I think of it, it's just one channel of many, and we're just playing the game of attention arbitrage. Yeah. And
I think too, I learned this years ago I can't remember where I even learned this, but even if you make a charitable donation to somebody, right? They even said, ask for your website to go on that thing, right? That website for cancer, whatever it may be, because that helps, right? It helps back in the algorithm. Is that right?
Oh yeah. And I'm sure there might be some SEO divas listening, but yeah, it's an endorsement. Yeah. When another website has your link to your website on there, it's an endorsement. It's a vote in terms of trying to win that election.
Point system, right? Basically a point. The more points I get, the higher up I rank.
Yeah, it's a math game.
Yeah. So the podcast certainly doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. The big thing about podcasts is a lot of us, including myself, we transcribe the episode, and a lot of times we'll put a link to the website of who your guest was. Well, that's a link, so it's a good tactic for the guest. It's excellent for the host too, from a distribution perspective.
I like it. How do you focus on branding, and how important is branding for us business owners?
Oh boy, branding. It's absolutely essential. There's so many components that goes into it. I think that it's what it really comes down to is being memorable, standing out in a crowded space. And when people talk about the rising costs of these channels, a lot of times they're talking about direct response marketing, because it's very short-term orientation and they're not looking at a long-term perspective. And really, when you're getting those lower CPAs, those lower costs to acquire a client, it comes from brand and word of mouth marketing. Okay.
And so you focus on that from just the name of your company? What do you focus on when you think of branding, or a different word, whatever word you use? What do you think about there?
Yeah, it's critical. I think of a company and personal brand. So myself, I have my interests, my hobbies, my expertise, but then the company has its own reputation that it wants to surround itself from. And it goes back to being distinctive. Like, how do you stand out amongst all your other competitors? And those are the through line messages that you want to reinforce to your audience.
So how would you do that?
Yeah. So the thing that I did, I hired an outside consultant. We read every single review. We surveyed our clients. We surveyed our employees, and it was a lot of data. And we found kind of some commonalities that people were repeating, and we kind of leaned into that.
Yeah. So would you say, how many employees do you have now?
Right now we got, for rankings, we've got around 40, 42.
Okay. And you said for rankings, so is there something else as well?
Yeah, I have 7 companies now. Okay. So I've got a real estate company. I've got another agency. I've got a content company, got a media company. And I'm not trying to bloviate. It's came from basically the main cash cow, which is rankings. Just opportunities. It's led itself to these others.
Yep. I like that. What habits would you say you have, or what are you doing right now to stay in the game and be a student of the game for you and your industry and your businesses?
Yeah, on the edge. So I'm obsessed with learning. I mean, we were talking. I was joking. I was hanging out at Barnes and Noble today. Every morning I read or listen to an audiobook or a podcast. Yeah. So I'm at like 84 business books this year to date. Got a business coach, Bobby Castro. He had a little exit of $1 billion. That's it? Just a little. Manages like 700 million in real estate. So he's helping me think bigger and raise those ceilings.
I bet.
And then I'm in a few masterminds, and I'm just a student of the game. I love the game.
So talk to us about that coaching. So I mean, I look, some of the sports stuff behind
Mm-hmm.
you. I look at Michael Phelps back there, and he had a coach. He's the greatest Olympian of all time and best
Mm-hmm.
swimmer of all time, and it'd be hard to believe his records will ever be broken. But he had a coach, he had a nutritionist, he had all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So why is having a coach so important for you?
The biggest thing is it just lifts the ceiling of what you think is possible. And I really need to equate this. I would say there's a coach perspective, and then there's like a mentor. A coach would be more like accountability and like working on the tactics. Mm-hmm. And I think when I said coach previously for Bobby Castro, he's more of a mentor. Like, here's what's possible. Here's what worked for me, as opposed to just holding me accountable. And I think there's excellent reasons for both. For me, I've always struggled with the diet and health. So a fitness and diet coach or nutrition coach, which I have now, is way better for me because I haven't had the consistency and I've needed a little bit more accountability or tactics. On the business side, I've got the tactics from reading and all the masterminds. Right. I need more of the mentorship. So it's just evolutionary and just learning. You've got to continue to improve your skill set to compete.
I think putting your money where your mouth is matters, though. I mean, I'm assuming all those aren't free.
Mm-hmm. Right? Oh, so definitely not free.
You're writing a big check for that stuff.
Yeah.
And so why is that something you feel that's necessary? Because a lot of people listen to that and be like, dude, this guy's a screwball, right? Or I have a business coach. I've paid a lot of money to a coach over the years. Why are we doing that?
Money is the equivalent of, it basically keeps you accountable. Like, there's no sunk cost, right? I think of it like this. Like, if I was going to go to the gym and I don't have a personal trainer, I could maybe make an excuse to not do something because, hey, I don't have the time, whatever. But when I'm paying someone and I'm going to let that person down because they're spending their time, there's a different level of accountability and commitment that goes with that. And for me, I find that it's just really effective. I've had multiple coaches in different areas and disciplines because a lot of times the books, they are mindset or motivational, and they really don't get tactical for, say, financials or different things of that nature. It's just really challenging from that medium, and I've needed those for different disciplines.
Yeah. I agree. I think the books, I read a lot, 10 pages a day minimally. But when I think of that, it's not the real meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's another good reason to go out and hire a coach and doing that. So let's talk about the grind as well. So do you enjoy the grind? I assume so, or you wouldn't be doing what you do. But like, what is it about the grind that you enjoy?
I'm going to sound like the biggest nerd in the world, but I used to be a gamer, and I would play like the RPGs, the role-playing games where you have this guy and they level up, they get some coins, they buy better equipment, or that's what business is. Like, you start with a few employees and then you get more and you have more capital to invest in things, and it is truly the game. I enjoy the game. I hire people that I enjoy working with. One of the easiest ways to leave the company is if like you're toxic and just so it really matters for value. So that's what keeps me going for the grind. And it's just I can't have that same enthusiasm playing a video game and things like that.
So how do you handle the stress? Is that easy for you? I mean, because it's not just a game, because it's a big game we're playing. Yeah,
the stress one's really tough. I haven't really perfected that one, honestly. The hang out with the family and wife and traveling and getting away and decompressing, really going away from tech really helps me. And I'm still working on it. I would say that's one of the biggest issues is shutting it off.
Okay. Yeah.
Head hitting the pillow, it's still like just firing on all cylinders. So I might have issues sleeping, but something I need to improve on.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
Maybe get a coach for it. Maybe talk to people that have had the same challenges. And I think having an awareness that is an issue, and it's changed because when it was just me and the wife, I had more time. Now that I've got my son, it's like, I got to be really intentional about all this. And so, yeah, it's going to be a lot of effort to improve there.
And I was just, as the old wily veteran I am, my oldest is 18 now, which is hard to believe. So I got 18 down to 9. It's crazy, right? Life will get busier. And I think the more the people that are listening to this, or for yourself, whoever, the more we can structure our time, right, and be purposeful and have the ideal calendar, the ideal day, the ideal week, I have found that is to be way more productive.
I couldn't agree more. You hear these individuals that have mastered it, right? Like the Rob Dyrdek, where he's like managing by minute. Yeah. And then you have the Jesse Itzler that's like talking about these, is it Misogi and these experiences that he has. He's
a phenomenal follow.
Oh yeah. Amazing. And so I think those are the individuals to model, because clearly they're both phenomenally successful, and there's a lot that we can learn from.
Yep. So what, when you think about AI and you think about Chat GPT, I'm asking a lot of guys these questions now because it's all you hear about, right? So what are your thoughts on those things, and where's our world going to be 5 and 10 years from now with this stuff?
Really good question. It makes me think of like Ravikant's 4 C's of leverage, which is like capital, code, and then there's content and collaboration, right? Well, tech and software, being AI, is this code. It's just a form of leverage. I asked our team when it came out, I'm like, look, are we farming without tractors? Or like, are we row cropping this content? Like, can we use AI? And that's what it is right now. It's a tool. There has to be human oversight especially in the legal vertical. You could really run into issues. So can it help you ideate headlines and outlines and things like that more quickly, or do some research? Absolutely can enhance your productivity. Is it a standalone right now? Not right now, thankfully. I may not have the SEO gig anymore, but but that's where we're at right now.
Do you think it will? I mean, I think it's going to take some people's jobs away, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think Google's going to change. Look, the search generative experience. For a long time, people are talking about these no clicks and how AI is going to eat up. Well, there's rich snippets now. Yeah. If you go to Google now, there's rich snippets where it doesn't take you to your website. So it's just going to be more of that. The thing that people don't talk about enough, Danny Sullivan talks about this, is the more content goes on Google and the more adoption it gets. So there's more adoption, so there's more usage. So it's not going to be just complete fall off entirely from these AI scenarios.
And I think it's still going to be a human experience there, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Human experience. Also, AI is going to want to consume as much original content and thought as possible. So being truly unique and not just regurgitating things is going to have a lot of value.
So what would you tell yourself now? So you've been doing this gig since, what was it, been 6 years, you said?
So the agency, been 10 years, a little over 10 years, but entrepreneur on my own for about 16.
Okay. So what would you tell yourself 15, 16 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever?
Geez, invest. Throw it in that index fund. I would say, what would I say? I would say don't be afraid of hiring. It was a little bit, I tried to do everything myself, even early on, even though I had some freelancers, and just have to look at things differently and scale yourself. That'd be one of my biggest tips.
Wasn't it scary to hire people?
Oh, so I was really resistant to like HR. Yep. I was like, we don't need HR. Like, why do we need HR? You hit this certain point, I think, into 8 figures where you have all these additional administrative costs. You have HR and finance and a bunch of mid managers, but they're a necessary component of scale. Yeah. And so that was something I had to get over, is just more people.
What fires Chris up today? What are you excited about?
Geez, just growing as a business owner, I think that there's levels in this game. Like right now, I'm a CEO and I want to be an owner and a chairman. And instead of me having to figure out who I need to hire the CEO that figures that out with scale. So that's like what I'm excited about.
How long is that away, you think?
Couple years probably.
Yeah. It's exciting, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So what's next, man? What's next for you, and what are you going to continue to build?
Yeah, I'm really trying to grow the real estate portfolio. I look at it as like it's the equivalent of buying SEO retainers, permanent SEO retainers that sign year-long contracts that are used to raising their rent every year.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to more of that. And man, just being a dad, once my kid starts playing sports, that's going to be a whole nother journey.
You going to do it the same or different?
I will do it a bit different than my dad. The discipline, the training, and coaching will be there. Maybe a little bit more of the positivity. Sorry, Dad. But
sorry, Dad.
Yep.
What's the drive? I think about that a lot right now with 2 high school kids in sports and an 8th grader in sports, a 4th grader in sports. It's like my dad didn't push me. I went on and played some college golf, and they pushed me, but it wasn't like I probably had a different deal than what you had. And so I don't know what's right, man. I've got all sorts of people in here, and you hear all sorts of different stories, and it works a million different ways. But I want them to follow their passions, do it the way they want to do it, and I'm sure that's what will happen with your son. So when you hear achieving a future greater than your past, what comes to mind for you?
Geez, legacy. I would say legacy. Teaching the values to my kid and his kids, and passing on the financial wisdom in order to have these opportunities. And just, that's what I think. I think of legacy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Last question, fears. How many of the fears you've put in your mind have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Ooh, that's a deep one. Immediately when you said fears, I was thinking of bees because I'm allergic.
I hate bees.
I hate bees.
I just had this conversation yesterday. We were at a golf tournament, a charity golf tournament, and a guy was telling a story from a few years before. He went back to the golf cart on this hole we were on, and he took a drink of his beer, and all of a sudden a wasp was flying around in his mouth. And he got stung like 6 or 7 times.
Oh, that's like my worst
They
nightmare.
had no EpiPen out there or whatever, and I'm just like, oh boy. So anyway, I apologize, but that just happened yesterday. I'm like,
that's good.
Yeah.
Fears, health, I want to be there for my family, and I'm trying to secure, everything as much as I can. But I think that's probably the biggest fear is just staying healthy.
Is accountability there?
It's there recently, but it hasn't been in the past.
Yeah.
I just did Frisella's 75 hard.
Man.
I just finished 2 days ago.
How you feeling?
Feel a lot better. Dropped about 20. Got some new habits. Working out every day, and it was tough. It was really tough.
So 75 hard, for those listening, you've probably heard of it. But anybody listening to the podcast knows about it. But if not, so 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes each. One of them has to be outdoors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Read minimum of X pages. What is
10
it? 10 pages a day. You got to drink a gallon of water. No booze for 75 days, and then no cheating on your diet.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So what were you eating?
So I just did keto, and I did the factor meals, so that helped out a lot. But then the no booze wasn't, I have drank, every weekend for a long time, but that wasn't as hard. Honestly, the hardest one for me was the gallon of water, just because I felt like there was no options. Like, I want a soda, but man, I got another 40 ounces of water I get to get in.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you feel different?
I do. I look a lot different too. And I had was the Inside Tracker. I hear that on Huberman's podcast.
Yeah.
And I bought that, and what triggered this is like my cholesterol and all the numbers are terrible. I was like, I got to make a change.
So what's the Inside Tracker? Is that the thing that goes in your arm?
So they basically do a blood draw on like all different types of metrics, and it's really in depth, and it has an app, and it shows you like where you should be and where you're at and recommendations. And I got like a really bad score, and I'm like, okay, it's time. I need to fix this. Need to improve.
Well, I think for me, accountability is there. We did it, and of course it worked so well for about 10 months. We stopped doing it over the summer, and we're just getting ready. I hope we're going to get it back together. And I say by hope, it's me. I started this thing, but it's 13 of my neighbors and my buddies. And so I sent a group text out, and then, we got to meet in my backyard, 6 a.m. And it's like, if I'm not there, there's, 12 of my buddies in my backyard. It's kind of weird, And so for me, I need that accountability. So
Yeah.
I think that's what's got it. I got to do it and get it back on it. But man, it's been awesome having you, Chris, on the Circuit of Success. Appreciate your time. As always, good to see you, my man.
Yeah, awesome.
so
Thanks for
much.
having me. I'm just gonna sign your name here.
Awesome.
Here we go.